Um, Sometimes Christmas Eve is full of a whole lot of things for me. Um, and then Christmas Day comes, and all of a sudden, a whole lot of things hit me at one time. A number of years ago, uh, I was just sitting there on Christmas morning listening to this song, and it's probably my favorite Christmas song. The title of it's called "How Many Kings," and it just speaks about some things. And I was just crying on Christmas morning, and I was holding our grandson. I don't even know if he was a year old yet or not. And I'm just going, this poor little guy here, he's a sinner, and he already needs a savior. He's not even 1 year old yet, I don't think, but he's going to need a savior, and he's going to need to make a choice about what he's going to do with Christmas after Christmas is over someday. How many of you guys understand what I mean by that? There's just something absolutely incredible about that. Well, yesterday this song came on, and I'm just kind of sitting there, and I'm being honest with you, I'm a little tired and just sitting there, and all of a sudden I just started crying. I go, I'm just going to kind of enjoy this moment of a little bit of emotional response. Not because the emotional response is what I'm desiring, but the emotional response is lifting my mind and lifting my heart towards the idea of what Christmas is all about. It was just a very special time, and I just want you to know that I'm human like everybody else, okay? Why does that? That has everything to do with this morning's message. How many of you remember Kmart in Stockton? Okay. Kmart is approximately where DeVega Brothers and where REI used to be. That's kind of where it was. And this one day I was in there. I was about 22, 23 years old, and I saw this guy, and he was stuffing things in his jacket. And I thought, this guy's rather interesting. This guy's stuffing stuff in his jacket. Anyway, he starts to walk out of the store. And as he walked out of the store, this guy who worked there, I'm sure, I think he was the manager, this is what he said to the guy. He said, would you mind telling me what WWJD means on your bracelet? And he goes, what? He really caught him. It was one of those. You had to be there to capture this whole thing, okay? And I'm watching this, and he goes, yeah, would you mind telling me what that WWJD means on your bracelet? And he goes, oh, what would Jesus do? And he goes, no, that stands for what would Judas do? He says, because you're wearing it, and that's what you're living. He says, open up your jacket. And he says, you are a farce to the world and a farce to that bracelet. Anyway, we watched him. Being truthful, I just wanted to see the whole thing, right? Okay. They don't know I watched because I'm like you guys. They don't know I was watching, but I was. And watched the guy go call the police, and the police came, and I watched the whole thing. It was great, okay? Make a long story short, a guy with a WWJD bracelet on was arrested and hauled away in a police car. And I'm just thinking, there's a big difference between WWJD with the word Jesus and WWJD with the word Judas. Why do I say that? Because you and I are reaching a new day today. Maybe Christmas is a huge event at your house. Maybe it's a huge event in your family's life. Maybe it's a gathering beyond gatherings. Maybe it's a very precious, emotional time. But I want you to know that December is a funny month because December starts with this great anticipation of everything for the month. It starts with decorations, and then this building takes place. And then all of a sudden there's this urgency that sets in on the 23rd. Can I really wrap all these presents? How many guys ever felt that? Okay. How many guys ever felt that for your spouse and you just watch them do it and you're just going, hey, have fun, all right? I'm relaxing and watching TV. Do I have enough wrapping paper? And then there's Christmas Eve, and you begin to start fitting some things in, and the reality is this, is that 2 days ago was Christmas Eve, and yesterday was Christmas, and you know what, and tomorrow's a day that, does Christmas make any difference? Does Christmas make any difference on the 26th or the 27th of December? Does Christmas make any difference on July 1st? There's this incredible verse in Luke chapter 2, and it's contrasted and expanded in Matthew 8. In Luke 2, it says this, and she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. The innkeeper had no room. Here's the expanded part, the contrasted part. It takes place in Matthew 8:34 where it says, and behold, I promise you I copied that straight from Bible Gateway. And behold, this is terrible. The whole city came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region. It's not just a city, it's the whole area. It's not just a person, it's everyone. I want you to know that there was a contrast, and the contrast is the life inside of the inn and the life outside the inn. Inside of the inn, there was this incredible reunion taking place. There was hooping and hollering. There was almost chaos. There was a busy life. There was a sense of enthusiasm. It was a family reunion. The innkeeper himself was thinking, this is the most glorious couple of days of my career. The governor has done me a favor business-wise. I'm making more money than ever before. He's burning the candle at both ends. Inside, he was having a blast. So is everyone else. And then there's this, think about their breakfast the next morning. Think about their breakfast a couple of days after this event takes place. And this is what they say. Anybody notice that young couple? And the answer would be no, because there was too many people. Which young couple? Yeah, the food was prepared that day. The bread was baked. The wine was poured. My assumption is that Mary would have been just one of many young pregnant women that maybe saw a no vacancy sign at the end. They probably weren't the only ones that didn't get a room. You ever gone on a vacation and seen a sign that said no vacancy? You're not the only one that saw that no vacancy sign. You're not the only one that forgot to make plans through, vacations to go or something like that. The blankets were washed. Literally, there wasn't time for a pause. There wasn't time to think. The business of life had gotten in the way of the manger. Simply put, they didn't have time for Jesus. Busyness of life took place. Let's contrast that with the inside of the manger. Whereas the inn was focused on themselves, the manger was focused upon God. There were no blankets, but there was this thing called swaddling cloths. How many of you honestly know what swaddling cloths are all about? Okay, swaddling cloths have more understanding than you would ever know. You see, swaddling cloths are what we now refer to as the thing that prevents them from getting cold, and we wrap them to keep them warm and keep them safe. But swaddling cloths back in those days were something completely different. Swaddling cloths was the GPS that the angels gave to the shepherds for where baby Jesus would be. You see, swaddling cloths is what was used in something that was referred to as the Tower of the Flocks. How many of you guys ever heard of the Tower of the Flocks before? Great, this will be a great lesson for all of us. You see, the Tower of the Flocks is this place where the Levitical shepherds would help birth these newborn lambs. And when the sheep would be pregnant and the sheep would come time for the baby lamb being born, they would set it on this table, this absolute clean table, and this newborn lamb would be wrapped in swaddling cloths that were absolutely the cleanest linen possible, because the last thing you want to do is blemish an unblemished lamb. It was a clean table to make sure that this lamb was not getting some imperfection by where it was born and the way in which it was laid down. There's only one of them in all of Bethlehem. There's only one in the entire region. Why was there only one in the whole region? Because it was near the place where the sacrifices of the lamb took place. And this newborn would be wrapped and carefully examined, because you would be able to see any discrepancies between this white and what should be white. Do you understand? You have to have a comparison there. It's not oyster white and white. It's white and white. It's not coffee, Swiss, paint, whatever that is called, okay? We got some in our house, something like that, okay? And it looks kind of white, but that's not white. And you handled it with this perfect swaddling cloth. You see, the swaddling cloth was for a comparison issue and a protective issue, and to make sure that no mistakes were made and no lamb was ever blemished. You see, if swaddling cloths were abundant in the area, the shepherds would have to knock on every single door to find out, hey, does your baby have swaddling cloths? Does your baby have swaddling cloths? You got a newborn? And if so, what are they wrapped in? No. There's just one place. It was the GPS marker. That's all the information that the shepherds received. And they knew exactly where to go. But they were going to this place of something that was going to be wrapped in something that was a comparison to themselves. The Tower of the Flocks. John chapter 1 verse 29 puts it this way: the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. The Word had become flesh. The birthplace of the Lamb was the same place that the sacrificial lambs were born. Make no mark, God knew what he was doing. What an incredible contrast to life inside of the inn. The other thing that's interesting about the manger is there's this exhausted Joseph. Not because of seeking fortune like the innkeeper, but the exhaustion of the fact that he had given his life to dedicating himself to getting Mary to where they ought to go, which is the town of David. Mary, on the other hand, is holding her precious son. And if she's a good Jewish girl, she knows the prophecy of Isaiah 53, and that this would be the suffering servant. Quite a contrast to the life of the party inside the inn. Those little wrinkled fingers, the moisture of the womb. His king-size bed, the first king-size bed there ever was. No, it wasn't from Sleep Train, didn't have a sleep number. It was not a therapeutic, a beauty rest, or memory foam, but it was a king-size bed. The fulfilled prophecies of God were right there in the manger. The shepherds who had heard the message of God were right there. The angels who had proclaimed praise to God were right there. Mary, who had endured and brought forth the first son, was there. Joseph, who had questioned God and settled with God and then obeyed God, it was all right there, in contrast to the rejection of God inside the manger. I want you to know this, is that the Christian life is not about an event. The Christian life is not about an event. It's not about a great Christmas Eve service. It's not about the census. It's not about the event, the family reunion. It's not about candlelight, soft music, precious prayer, and scripture reading. It's not an event where there's simply honored guests from our family or from our neighborhood. Many of us have experienced office parties. Many of us have experienced open houses. We've experienced ugly sweater competitions. It can be fun to place gifts under a tree or even exchanging of packages, not an exchanging of gifts. Did you notice that? We don't even worship the event. We worship Jesus Christ. I don't worship the feelings that I had yesterday morning. I worship Jesus Christ. Those feelings are prompters, and they help me remember. We don't worship the memory of these annual gatherings. We worship the living birth of the one who came to save the people from their sins. What's life like after Christmas? It's not about what's in the box, because many of those boxes are just going right back on the shelves, right? I know people who have 20, 30, 40. The record that I know of is 54 boxes of Christmas decorations. This person who has 54 boxes of Christmas decorations, they're not shoe boxes. They're moving boxes. It takes this person 7 days to set this stuff up. They take a week off before Thanksgiving. But it's not about what's in the box. It's not about what's in the box of presents. It's not about what's in the bag of presents. It's not about the tissue paper galore, the wrapping box, the ribbon in abundance. It wasn't about what was in the 3 containers that the wise men brought: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. If it had been 3 wise women, they probably would have had diapers. They probably would have had formula. And they probably would have had some onesies. But it's not about what's in the box. Maybe your boxes have Christmas cookies in them. Maybe your boxes have Christmas treats. Maybe they have Chex Mix or crackers aplenty. The treats are incredible and all those things taste great, and I've had more than my share of them. But life on January 1st and on July 1st is not about what's in the box. Life is about the fellowship and the fellowship of God. Today is one of the greatest days, the day after Christmas, when we should stop and think about our fellowship. I'm not saying fellowship, I'm saying fellowship. You see, fellowship is that idea of studying the life of Jesus. It's about knowing him. It's about imitating him. When I was little, I loved to imitate other people. Oh, what a blast imitating other people. You ever try to talk like them and then somebody goes, "No, I can do it better than you"? And when I was growing up, I used to watch bowling on TV. I bowled. It was probably the only thing I was really ever very good at. And I just remember there was all these different things. And this one guy, after he would bowl, he'd always do this. So I tried doing that, and I tried to do it. But when I did it too early. And the ball would go in the gutter because I would go like this before. And it took me a while to kind of get used to it. But there was this idea of imitation. Imitation was what is needed in football stadiums all over the world. Because in football stadiums all over the world, there's 22 guys on the field deeply in need of rest, with 80,000 fans deeply in need of exercise. What is fellowship? Fellowship starts with a simple phrase that Jesus proclaimed in Matthew 4:19. "Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." He's speaking to fishermen, and he's saying, "Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Some of you in the room might be a computer programmer. Come follow me, and I will teach you to program people towards loving God. Maybe some of you are construction workers. If so, Jesus would have said, "Come follow me, and I will teach you to help construct men's lives to change their lives forever." Maybe you're a teacher. Come follow me, and I will help you teach those about following me. But it starts with following and watching. Come follow me starts with this idea of learning. It's not so that you can pass the true or false test. You guys ever had the true or false test? Here's the true or false test. What was Mary's child name? True or false? See, I confused you, didn't I? You know why I confused you? Because you were waiting for a true-false question. True or false? Now let's try again. True or false? Jesus was Mary's son. True or false? My life is imitating him. One was informational and one was relational. One was informational and one was active living. It doesn't take place so that we can do better on a test. It's so that we won't be amusement people. Do you know what amusement people are? Amusement people are people whose lives are made out of amusement parks. Do you know the word muse means to think? An amusement park means I have no thought. I have no thinking. I am without thought completely. Our lives should not be amusement parks. Church is about worshiping and empowering. Church is about the adoration and being reminded of what he asks us to do. Simply put, fellowship starts with watching what Jesus does. Step 2 is this. It continues with the idea of learning about his teaching. In Matthew 5:1, it says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach them." Quite a contrast, right? He's sitting down on a mountainside. Why is he sitting on a mountainside? Because he's at the bottom of the mountainside and the people go up, and he could speak to a couple of thousand people at what is called the Sermon on the Mount. It's not Sermon on the Mound for those of you that are baseball fans, okay? It's called the Sermon on the Mount. And as he spoke to the people, the voice would just carry up to a couple thousand people, even though he was only talking to his disciples. And at this time, he makes a phrase every few verses, each of the little topics that takes place. He says, "You have heard it said." And then he compares what you've heard said with what he wants you to know. And you might be thinking to yourself, what does it mean, you have heard it said? Well, if you were a good Jewish boy, you would have memorized this phrase already, and you've heard it, you know it, but that's not the end of it. You see, he's comparing what the Old Testament said, which is called the Old Covenant, to what is the New Covenant in Jesus Christ. It's not just the way it used to be, but just listen to this phrase because I want you to mimic something new. You're no longer an observer. The harder and longer you wait to join something, the harder it becomes. How many of you enjoyed swimming as a child? How many of you are the kind of people that you just jumped right in? You didn't touch your toe to the water. Why do people touch their toe to the water? Either you're going in or you're not going in. This is just me, okay? Can you relate to this? Okay. You know why people stick their toe in? Because they're going to take forever to get in anyway. Okay? Wouldn't it be great if at a swimming race, the Olympics, the guy calls out the phrase, swimmers take your mark, set, and some guy says, wait, can I test the water? No, the purpose was a race. The purpose of going to a swimming pool is not to get your toe wet. It's to get your whole body wet and begin to have fun. And here's this idea of what Jesus is doing is Jesus is giving them a lifestyle choice. Math is not for the purpose of quizzes on Friday. Math is the purpose to check your mathematical findings in life. It used to be to help balance your checkbook. It used to be so you'd know that the change was being given correctly. When I was growing up, my dad said to me once, he said, if you could tell me how much change I'm supposed to get before the guy gives it to me, he goes, I'll give you all the change. I won every time. Why? Because I'd stayed after school enough to know my math. History is not just to understand this factual memorization of events. It's to understand how they happened and how they could have been prevented. Reading is not just for comic books and for fictional novels. It's to be able to read and study the Word of God. So for step one was following and watching. Step two is continuing on with learning. And step three is this idea of this. It continues by participating with the Lord Jesus. In Matthew 14:19, it says, and he commanded the multitudes to sit down on the grass. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke the bread and gave to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. Part of fellowship is participation with the Lord in service. It's participation with the Lord in service. It's not just having a gym membership card, it's using it. Do you know that the gym memberships in the world will go up dramatically in the next 5 weeks? And know that usage does not? The disciples had a chance to participate together and serve with him. They got a chance to pass out a little tiny bit. But you know, generally, I want you to know this. The church has failed you. Churches place nooses on people when it comes to service. And I apologize for them. You volunteer for something and you're stuck with it the rest of your life. I don't want to work in the nursery because I don't want to be there 27 years from now because no sub came in. I don't want to teach those preschoolers because, quite frankly, they got dirty diapers now and they're going to have dirty diapers then. I'm just going to be stuck in there. Some people say, but if you give me a key, I'm going to have to unlock the building sometimes. That's right, so we can use it. And the church has failed to equip people. I want to describe a night. I don't think I've ever shared this here in this church. But I went to In-N-Out one night. It was about 12 o'clock midnight. And there was about 4 other people in there. And there's this guy who was being trained. And this is what I saw. I saw this manager, this trained guy taking this training. He walked up to a table and he goes, hey, he goes, I'd like to show you how we wipe the tables at In-N-Out. Have I showed you this before? And he sprayed something on the table, and then this is what he did. I kid you not. Watch my hand. He goes, hey, we start in the upper left corner, and we go across and down and over and down and over and down and over and down and off the table. We do not make circles on the table. All making circles on the table do is leave the ketchup in the middle of the table. And he says, so I showed you. He says, come over here. And he goes, just talk me through it. And the guy sprays and he starts to go like this. And he said, sir, he said, I'm going to show you again how to wipe the table. He says, you spray it. You start in the upper left corner. You go over and down and over and down and over and down and over and down and over. He goes, the whole table will be wiped because we are in and out. And cleanliness is one of our passions. Guy says, hey, let's practice on about 10 tables. And he goes, and then I'll never have to wonder if you know how to do it again. If I see you making circles, I know that you're deciding to do it your way instead of our way because we're not Burger King. So I watched the guy do this whole thing. He goes, let me show you how to empty the trash. And he goes over to the trash and he opens up this thing and he pulls the trash can out and he says, we tie the bag first. He says, we tie the bag first. And if the bag feels really heavy, that means that there's a lot of liquid in it. He said, and if so, he says, we walk outside with it and pull it out. Because if you pull it out inside the store and the liquid gets on the floor, it'll just be a mess. He said, so you tie it first. He says, and you get an idea of what it is. And I'm watching this take place and I'm going, this is like free entertainment tonight. I'm going, this guy's training this guy. And I'm just enjoying, I'm going, this guy's a genius at training people. Jesus helped these guys by participating them in ministry. And as a church, I want you to know this. We are committed to helping you. Step 4 of what's life like after Christmas. It's this. It continues with being sent. coming back to this in and out little illustration here. You know what? This guy sent him on to do his job. In Mark chapter 6, it says this, and he called unto himself the 12, and he began to send them forth 2 by 2, and gave them power over unclean spirits. I promise you this, if you're ready to take the next step, we'd be thrilled to show you how to do that. I'm so thankful to a man named Ken and his wife Judy, who taught me how to take prayer requests from people. He says, when you're taking prayer requests, the worst thing you can do is forget their prayer request. And so he always had a piece of paper. This is in 7th grade Sunday school, and he just wrote all the prayer requests down. And then they prayed over all of them. I'm so thankful to Jerry and Mary Beth Fowlett, who taught me about how to teach. I'll never forget the first time they asked me to teach. It was about the different theories that happened about Jesus and the resurrection. And I remember he gave me a little card, and he said, hey, John, he goes, I want you to write the word swoon theory on here. And I want you to then turn it and write the word, the disciples stole the soldier stole the body. And then I want you to turn it again and just write the wrong tomb. And I don't remember what the fourth was. And then on the back, he goes, I want you to write a couple little notes to yourself. And he goes, and you're going to hold up to this class of 7th and 8th grade kids. He goes, you're going to hold it up, and they're going to see the word swoon theory. And he goes, and you can just read it from the back. I go, that's a pretty clever idea. And then he goes, and then you turn and you say, hey, maybe the disciples stole the body, and then you can read the back. He goes, then you can turn it again, and you can talk about the wrong tomb. And I go, and he said, John, they go, it's being prepared. He goes, I can't remember a lot. So he goes, I always have little cue cards with me. He goes, and what they see on the front isn't what's on the back. What's on the front is what I want them to remember, and what's on the back is what I'm going to say about it. And I thought, what an incredible idea. I'm so thankful to a guy named Stan who taught me about how to run a game night and how to present the gospel of Jesus Christ. So thankful to Fred Jantz for teaching me how to visit somebody in the hospital. I remember he just said, hey, John, he goes, I'm going to go visit somebody in the hospital. He goes, I want you to come with me. I said, really? And he goes, yeah. He goes, when we get there, he goes, I just want you to read this little verse, okay? He goes, we're just going to read a verse. He goes, I'll talk for a little while, and then I'll say, hey, I'd like you to, John's going to read a verse because the scriptures are important. He goes, and then I'll pray. So thankful that he involved me in that. About 4 days later, he asked me if I wanted to go visit this other person in the hospital. He said, hey, John, he goes, do you want to, he goes, you happen to know this guy. I said, do you want to talk a little bit first? He said, just ask him a couple questions. He goes, do you want me to do that too? And I said, I'll do that. So I asked him a couple questions, and then I read the verse, and then he prayed. And about a week later, he took me another time. And he goes, John, he goes, why don't I just smile and you do as much as you want, and I'll kind of clean it up afterwards. You know what? I remember when he took me to go see somebody whose family was in havoc. He said, John, he goes, I want you to go. You don't need to say anything. He's been in the end. He goes, would you give their kid a hug? He goes, well, that kid is hurting as bad as his mom and dad is. He said, that's all I need you to do. I said, Fred, what are you going to say when you get there? He goes, I have no idea. He said, but being there is more important than what I'm going to say. He says, just more not making a mistake than it is having the right thing to say. And we walked in, and he said, I wish life wasn't this way. That's the only thing that he said. And then they started talking. But I'm so glad he took the time to let me go with him so that I could learn. And then I remember him calling me and say, John, could you go and have a conversation with so-and-so? I felt comfortable because I'd been through this. So what's life like after the manger? It's about watching him. It's about listening to his teachings. It's about participating together. It's about being sent. But it's also remembering that there needs to be disciples all over the world. Mark 16:15 says this, and he said unto them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. being committed to the work of God with our time, with our finances, and with our heart. I want the manger to be an experience of the holiness of God and the forgiveness of sin, and I want to help others know about that as well. I'm planning on taking my kids with me to heaven. I'm planning on taking my grandkids with me to heaven. Planning on taking my nieces and my nephews with me to heaven. How are they going to know? They're going to know because I have room for him in my heart, and I want them to make room for him in their heart. And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger. Because there was no room for him in John's heart. I hope that would never be true. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region. May that never be so with me, and may that never be so with you. Don't put Christmas in a box. It doesn't fit. Put Christmas in your heart, and let's love and cherish him forever.